Beginning of the budget. This is the middle of the budget process. This is the beginning of the some of the formal public process. So I thought we'd walk through the budget situation, and then Chris is going to come up and talk about the forecast. But we know the goals are to assure public services are provided for the well-being of citizens. We know that we try to allocate and use resources for basic and essential services. We try to maintain and minimize operating deficits, and long-term 2021 achieve a structural balance of revenues and expenditures. I want to remind us that in the retreat in 2000, and we're going to go through the last several years, retreat in 2010, this is what the chart looked like. It looked like we were going to have a $14.5 million deficit in 2011. What ended up was a $7.3 million deficit, a turnaround of some $5 million. We did that because we reduced corrections adult residential program. We delayed some maintenance and construction. We eliminated software maintenance agreements. We closed the stores at the two parks. We combined maintenance personnel which is a great improvement for ComCare and DIO facilities. We stopped the safety net for CDDO and eliminated 6 positions in the manager's office and finance, implement in IT, and implemented special volunteer retirement program for 119 employees. So in 2012 retreat forecast looked like this, with a $16.3 million deficit. But what really happened was we ended up actually with $1.1 million surplus in 2012. We did that because we did across-the-board reductions to lead reductions of $10.3 million in cost, reduction of 106 employees, and public safety given a 3% reduction. Other departments were given 6.6% reduction. Positions were nearly eliminated in every area, and the employees not given a pay increase. In 2013, again, it looked like a $9.3 million deficit, but actually ended up with $600,000 surplus. In 2013, we did a $7.2 million cuts and elimination of 69 full-time employees. We reduced MAPD contribution. We reduced employee development and recognition. Reduced staff in general government, EMS, corrections, highways, ComCare, health and parks, and outsourced fleet. Again, in 2014, it looked like a $2.7 million deficit, but turned out to be a $2.7 million surplus. And those were done because of overall budget increases, but adjustments were made to reduce low priority services. That's when we closed Judge Riddell's Boys Ranch, mental health pod added to detention, business model improvements in EMS billing and highway inspections, and funded classifications and compensation for employees. So the budget for 2014, 2015 budget, 2.5 was forecasted after the budget process was complete. $3.4 million in excess expenses were eliminated, $400,000 in new revenue added, cash funded projects of $800,000, and then shifted tax support to other programs, funding sources for CDO and that aging in public works, increased billing rate for EMS. So the actual operating incomes for 2009 to 14, you can see that we did have deficits in 2 years and then surpluses in the final years. Using the budget development process, we began this with your retreat. Department heads developed the budget request in March. We're now, we had hearings in April to review the analysis of the department's budget. You're reviewing it now in department budget request, and we'll get the discussions of department budget requests with the Board of County Commissioners after this process is done. July, the recommended budget will be made, and in August, we assume that you will approve and adopt a budget for 2016. The financial forecast you can see is currently, and Chris is going to go into some detail on this, aren't you?
Yes.
So, there. The operating income forecast is here's what it looks like for 2016, and so we know what we're facing. But as you can see by the previous slides, we face that this time of year every time and worked our way through it. So May 13th, we start this budget discussions. July 15th, recommended to you. The last up day is July 22nd. That's the last day in which you can approve any tax increase. On July 29th is the first public hearing, and second is August 6th, and August 12th is the budget adoption. And that's the process. But between the 13th, after these hearings are done this week and the beginning of next week, we will be around to visit you to talk specifically about some of the ideas that you may have and that we may have about budget reductions. That's all I got, and thank you very much.
One question, Bill. The slide before 19, the operating income forecasts and deficits. Is this something you said Chris is going to talk about?
Yes.
Okay.
In detail.
Okay.
There was no reason for...
Got it.
Okay. I can't get out of here.
I'll do it.
Okay, so as Bill said, this is the start of your formal involvement in the preparation of the 2016 budget. And the process that we contemplate this year will be very similar to what has happened in prior years. For those of you who have been through this process before, it will seem pretty familiar to you. What is guiding the development of the 2016 budget, first and foremost, are the goals that the Commission has established previously for the administration, and you see them listed on this page. You have told us very clearly that you want us to be able to balance the budget and maintain fiscal integrity. And what I mean by that is that you do not want us to balance the budget using gimmicks. You want a sustainable, balanced budget. You want the government to be very focused. You want us to continue looking for ways to optimize the service that we provide to the public. And I use the word optimize there intentionally. We are not trying to maximize service. We don't have the resources to do that. We are in a position where we have to define what services we're going to provide. And then your third goal is that we are to be very clear and concise in describing what those services are that are the county government's responsibility to provide. Now, turning to the financial forecast for 2016, I'm going to run through first what key assumptions are driving the revenues in that forecast, and then some of the key assumptions that are driving expenditures. For property taxes, the biggest funding stream to fund the property tax supported portion of the budget, we are estimating for 2016 an increase in the tax base of 1.9%, which equates to $1.6 million. We are looking at a loss of mortgage registration fees as a result of the legislation that was adopted last year. In 2016, we estimate that lost revenue will amount to $1.2 million. Now, that is mitigated to a very small degree by increases in the per-page filing fees that the legislature adopted at the same time they adopted the phase-out of mortgage registration fees. In 2016, we expect those fee increases, those per-page fees for the Register of Deeds, to produce $48,000. We are, pursuant to the instructions we've received from you, we are anticipating that YRC2 will be budgeted in 2016, and so we are counting on $1.2 million of revenue from the state to fund that facility. We are looking at a $1 million increase in retail sales and use taxes, which is something on the order of 3%. We are looking at a $600,000 increase in motor vehicle taxes. And with regard to this one, I will simply note that, as I think most of you recognize, the legislature still has an active bill under consideration which would substantially reduce the county's motor vehicle taxes over a period of years. We have not taken that into account in our 2016 forecast because that bill hasn't been adopted yet. But if it should be adopted, this portion of the forecast will change fairly quickly. And finally, in revenues, we are estimating that medical charges for services, these are the fees that are collected by EMS and by ComCare and the health department primarily, we're estimating that they will produce an additional $400,000 of revenue. Turning to the expenditure side of the ledger, we are contemplating an increase in employee compensation through the pay-for-performance pay adjustment pool of 2.5% in 2016. We are anticipating that there will be an increase in our health costs of 7%, the premiums that we put in the departmental budgets to pay for employee health care. That percentage is clearly uncertain. This is the first year that we have moved to a self-funded program. The providers, when we were going through the selection process, told us, and our selected provider continues to tell us, that there will not be sufficient information to build a reliable estimate for 2016 until several months after our budget has been adopted. And so we're going to have to base this estimate, base this portion of the budget on a best estimate, and at this point 7% is that best estimate. We are looking at cash to fund capital projects as we do every year, and in 2015 the facilities and drainage projects in the financial forecast have been assumed to require $2 million of cash from the general fund, and road and bridge projects have been assumed to require $15.2 million of the county local option sales tax. Again, these are what are included in the financial forecast, and that is based on the adopted CIP that was adopted last year in 2015. As you'll see when we go a little bit farther in this presentation, the CIP that is being prepared for your consideration this year will cause those numbers to change. But as you've not seen those numbers and we have no sense of whether or not those numbers are going to be adopted, we have not yet included them in the financial forecast. For 2016, we have a presidential election, and so we have increased the election commissioner budget, or we are proposing to increase the election commissioner budget by about $450,000 to pay for the additional people, the additional postage, and other related expenses associated with that very large election. We have included in the financial forecast for 2016 $3 million to pay the county's portion of the law enforcement training facility. At this point, we don't know what the law enforcement training facility is going to be. We don't know where it's going to be located. We don't know what it's going to cost, but we know that, and have known for a number of years now, that the facility definitely is needed. There is general consensus, I believe, among you as well as among our colleagues across the street, that the facility is needed, and exactly what form the project will take is being worked out. For financial forecasting purposes, we've included $3 million of county cost in the financial forecast for 2016. And finally, again, you've directed us to include JRBR, or a comparable YRC2 facility in the budget. We have included in the financial forecast an estimated cost for 2016 of $3.2 million for that program. The costs of doing business increase each and every year. And what you see on this slide show the magnitude of some of those normal costs of business and how they're increasing and how we have to include them in our financial forecast and in the budget. For health insurance costs, for 2016, we are assuming they will increase in the tax funds by $1.9 million, which is 10.6%. Now, if you were listening just a few minutes ago, I said that we have assumed a 7% increase in employee health costs. And that is true. The difference between a 7% base assumption and a 10% increase in total cost is the addition of the YRC2 employees who we assume will be receiving health insurance benefits in 2016. And they are receiving nothing, of course, this year. Pension costs similarly are increasing an estimated 12.3%, which adds $1.4 million of spending to the property tax supported funds. That increase also is larger than the base assumption that we have included in the forecast for services that we currently operate. The reason for the larger increase is because of the addition of YRC2 employees. Utilities costs are estimated to increase about $300,000, a little over 9% in 2016. We have a contract for inmate food which says that the vendor is entitled to adjustment in prices each year based on the market price of the raw food materials that are used to produce the inmate meals. For 2016, we have estimated that cost increase will amount to 12%, which is about $230,000. Similarly, we have a contract for medical services at the jail and for inmates under the sheriff's custody. We know that contract provides for a 3% increase in 2016, and that amounts to $161,000. I previously mentioned the increase in election costs because of the 2016 presidential election. $130,000 of that increase is attributable to postage for the election office. So the postage budget will increase 16% year over year because of that. And finally, in recent years, as we have placed an increased reliance on technology to streamline county operations and to gain efficiencies, we have added to the cost of software maintenance. All of those new systems that we have put in place require annual maintenance contracts with the provider of the software. And for 2016, we believe that the total cost of software and hardware maintenance contracts will add $108,000 to the tax fund spending, which is about 4%. In the financial forecast, in the out years, 2017 through 2020, we are assuming a 3% employee pay pool for the Pay for Performance program, 3% pay pool each year. We are including cash for capital projects, again based on the adopted 2015 capital improvement program, and so that provides for those 4 years $5 million of cash for facilities and drainage projects and just under $71 million of cash for road and bridge projects. We have, as I think most of you know, we have been setting aside funds to replace the voting machines, and in 2017, when we expect that replacement will need to occur, we are expecting to have to incur an additional $2.5 million of cost to complete the set aside of funds to provide for that program. We are assuming the tax base, assessed values, will increase each year, ranging from 2.75% in 2017 up to 4% in 2019 and 2020. And we are assuming that mortgage registration fees will continue to deteriorate as that new law is phased in. The loss per year will be about $1.3 million until 2019, when that revenue has completely been eliminated. If you put all those assumptions together, you end up with this picture of operating income, and it's the same one that the county manager showed you in his presentation. For the past 3 of the past 4 years, to the left of the line on this chart, We have run operating surpluses in the tax funds. In 2011, we ran a deficit. That was, as those of you who were here at the time will recall, that was when we were at the peak of the impact of the recession on Sedgwick County government. That was the year in which the federal sustainability grants had gone away. The local economy had not yet recovered, and so we planned for a deficit. We incurred a deficit. But then in 2012, 13, and 14, we were able to run surpluses. Looking forward, 2015 through 2020, we are projecting fairly significant deficits, just under $8 million this year, increasing to $9.8 million in 2016, and you can see the rest of them. That looks like a pretty dire situation, but as the manager said in his presentation, we've been there before. This is a chart that is familiar to most of you. We refer to it as the bending the curve chart, and we start with the dotted line, the dashed line at the bottom, the gray line, which is the financial forecast that the Commission was shown at its retreat in 2011. And what you see on the in the red line is what the Commission established at that retreat as its goal, as what it expected the administration to be able to accomplish. And what you see on the blue line is what we actually accomplished and the forecast going forward. The point of all of this is that we have been here before. We have projected very large deficits before. We did in 2011 when we gave you the forecast that led to this chart. But we didn't actually incur those deficits, and we don't expect to incur those deficits going forward. We give you a financial forecast intentionally to show you what will happen if nothing changes in county government during the life of that forecast. But we know that things will change, and we intend for things to change. The purpose of the forecast is not to say what will happen. It's to show us what the scale of the concern needs to be so that we can assure that that reality doesn't happen. And as you see from the history, we've been pretty successful in accomplishing good results despite dire forecasts. Yes, sir.
Now, in order to get those good results, though, we have had times to lay off many people and
Absolutely.
make difficult decisions and cut budgets.
Absolutely. And they have been made in an orderly process, and many of them have been made through the budget cycle, but many others have been made administratively, and we would expect the same thing to happen going forward.
Thank you.
A couple of months ago, or less maybe, I showed you a chart very similar to this one, which identified what is driving growth of county spending. The line at the top of the page shows public safety expenditures, which have increased over the past 10 years at the rate of just about 5% per year. And now we are spending a little over $140 million a year on public safety. The other three lines representing health and welfare, the brown, general government, the blue, and everything else Sedgwick County government does, the green, have been essentially flat. There has been growth in the all other category, but in fact, for general government and for health and welfare, we spent less in 2014 in each of those functions of government than we spent 10 years previously in 2005. And you can see that the trends have been downward for both of those. That represents a conscious decision of this commission and its predecessors to shift resources based on priorities from health and welfare and general government to public safety. And we expect that similar priority-based decisions will be made as we move through this budget cycle. So what you'll hear about over the next week and a half as we go through these budget reviews are total base budgets, that is budgets for current level activity, that are estimated to be $415 million. We ask departments to tell us to the extent they need to do something different, provide a new service, provide the same service in a different fashion, provide an increase in resources to deliver a service, we ask them to tell us about that through what we refer to as a decision package. A decision package is a request for additional funding for some specific purpose. And you will hear about $2.6 million worth of decision packages that have been received from the various operating departments. Those decision packages will address such things as staff for the emergency medical system operator, for the 911 call takers, for a nurse line for the EMS operation to reduce the need for calls that don't result in transports, a community paramedicine program to reduce the cost of services in EMS. You will hear requests for forensic science pathology and indigent burial cost increases resulting from increased contractual service costs. You've already heard about the sheriff's food service and medical contract increases. The sheriff will be talking about those as decision packages when he comes and talks to you about his budget. You'll hear about the need for professional development in corrections and various enhancements that are required in the consolidation of the code enforcement operations between county and city staffs. You'll hear about the perceived need for an additional billing representative or two for EMS billing services. You'll hear about mental health transports and additional election staff for the 2016 presidential election, and utilities increases that I already mentioned, and park store stock at Lake Afton because the commission has asked the park director to reopen that store. Well, reopening that store requires the acquisition of inventory, and so you'll hear about that. You also will hear about a variety of of options to increase county revenues. You will hear about a potential for increasing the EMS rates that we charge our customers. You'll hear about similar fee adjustment proposals for forensic science fees that we impose to some extent on local residents, to a larger extent on other counties who buy services from our forensic science center. You'll hear about adult intensive supervision fee adjustments. And finally, you'll hear about the possibility of imposing a data fee for GIS services on users of those services. So those will all come about. Yes?
The base budget of $415 million, how does that compare to this year?
This year's total adopted budget is?
Well, the revised budget right now is $425 million. So it's a reduction of $10 million from the 2015 revised. But there's...
Okay.
There are some caveats.
Got it.
Okay. I said that you'll hear about a new proposed capital improvement program. That CIP, which is subject to change from between now and next Wednesday when it's presented to you, but as of now, that CIP calls for a total of $16.5 million of cash to pay for projects in 2016. $1.7 million of cash for facilities projects, $14.8 million of sales tax cash to pay for road and bridge projects. That CIP, because we are in the midst of considering whether or not the county is going to stop using debt to fund projects and instead use cash, that CIP, as it stands right now, calls for a total of $13.4 million of debt to be issued by the county in 2016 to pay for facility and drainage projects to the tune of just under $9.4 million and road and bridge projects to the tune of $4 million. And so to the extent that you elect to go debt-free, that will cause us to reassess those projects and perhaps have to figure out a way to come up with cash to pay for those as well. You've all heard about Cronus's law of budgeting. Well, I think most of you have. Perhaps Commissioner Howell. This is going to be some education.
I read the slide already. I think I know where.
Okay. This is the law, and it's very straightforward, and it's very simple, and it's inescapable. Funding is never the problem. Priorities are the problem. Now, the priority may cause you to need to increase funding, but that's not a funding problem, that's a priority problem in my assessment. The corollary to that is that some things must be lower priority. Everything can't be top priority. And your job, as you work through the next several months to consider the county's 2016 budget, is going to be to determine what those priorities are and how we are going to provide essential public services to more than 500,000 citizens in 2016 within the level of resources that are available to us. So to do that, here are the highlights of the calendar over the next several months. We are beginning today with your formal budget reviews. They will continue through, I believe it's the end of next week. June the 26th is an internal date. It's important internally, but not for any other reason. We refer to it as Drop Dead Day, and that is the day at which the manager has to have his recommendations firmed up so that we can submit the finish preparing the recommended budget and submit it to the printer so that we can deliver it to you on July the 15th. On July the 15th, at a Wednesday meeting, we will present the recommended budget. It will be posted on the county's website. There'll be a fair amount of discussion of it. The following week, July the 22nd, is what we refer to as Last Up Day. Under state law, as I think you know, we are required to publish a summary of the budget that you are considering for adoption, and we are required to publish the amount of property taxes that are necessary to fund that budget. Once we publish that budget, you are not allowed to adopt a final budget that spends more money or requires greater property taxes to fund it. Last Up Day is the day that we lock in those ceilings, those upper limits on the budget that you can ultimately adopt.
Chris?
Yes.
Are there any other restrictions on, as far as moving things between individual departments or silos after that point, so to speak?
The budgets that you adopt are at a fund level.
Okay.
The property taxes that you adopt are at a fund level. Now, what you'll see is one number that represents the total for all of those, but what is published is individual fund level budgets, and those are what are capped under the state law. So within the general fund, you can move money from Department A to Department B, but you can't move money from the general fund to the highway fund or to the ComCare fund. Similarly, you can't move money from the ComCare fund to the general fund.
So how many of those funds then are we talking about that we're setting at that date?
We'll have 8 certified funds for the county.
8 funds. So and I think it's important to understand that's what it's not the overall deal. It's, well,
Yes.
The overall is added together, but we're really 8 individual budgets that can't then be increased. They can be decreased, right?
Yes.
Okay.
On July the 29th, and we believe it will be in the morning, in the AM, you will conduct the first public hearing. We are required under state law to hold one public hearing before you adopt the budget, but traditionally this county commission has held at least 2 public hearings, and so on August the 6th, we believe in the evening, in the PM, you will conduct a second public hearing. And then finally, on August the 12th, a Wednesday, you will consider final adoption of the budget. And following that, the budget staff will prepare the certified forms that are required to be submitted to the county clerk no later than August the 25th in compliance with state law. So that's kind of the highlights of what's going to be happening over the next several months. Between now and June 26th, Drop Dead Day, you can expect lots of visits from the county manager, Mr. Holt, Lindsay Poe-Rousseau, the budget director, myself, and perhaps others, to discuss with you various ideas for what should appear in the recommended budget. And we will, as those of you who've been through the process before know, we will be in a fairly intensive meeting mode over the next month or 5 or 6 weeks, I guess, until June the 26th to work out what ultimately will appear in the recommended budget. Citizens who are interested in monitoring the process will be able to view these budget review sessions online at the county's website, which is shown here. The recommended budget after July the 15th will be posted online on the county's website as well. And as we have done for a number of years, we will have an online public hearing through the county's website so that citizens who, for whatever reason, decide that they can't or don't want to come in to the public hearing can post comments that will be made available to you so that they have an opportunity to share their views about the recommended budget with you. And that will all happen as of July the 15th and thereafter until budget is adopted. The public hearings, once again, will be on July the 29th and August the 6th, one in the morning and one in the evening, and those will be given a fair amount of publicity as we move closer to those dates. Now, the caveats that we talked about a little bit earlier. What you are going to be hearing about over the next week and a half is not the recommended budget. What you are going to be hearing about are the requested budgets of the various operating departments. The budgets that have been requested have been built to targets provided for the operating departments by the budget office. What will not be included in those budgets will be compensation increases because the amount of the compensation pool has not yet been determined. We have assumed a particular rate, which I've identified earlier in the financial forecast, but we're not going to actually add that to operating department budgets until we have a clearer idea of what that pool is going to be, or at least what's going to be recommended. Similarly, we don't yet have fleet charges and various administrative charges locked down for 2016 yet. And so what is included in the requests that you'll be hearing about over the next week and a half are charges for fleet services and for indirect costs that are the actual 2015 budgeted amounts. And they will be changed as we prepare the 2016 recommended budget. In the budget requests that you will be hearing about, there will be no discussion of capital improvement projects because we prepare the CIP through a separate process from the budget, and then once we have presented the CIP to you and have gotten some indication of what's going to be likely to be approved, only then do we add those projects to department budgets. So you'll hear about the CIP, but that will be all in one session, and when individual departments talk to you about their budget requests, they won't have any capital improvement projects. The purpose of these reviews for the next week and a half is for you to gather information about how you might want to use the county's resources in 2016. It will be for you to gather information so that you can decide in your own mind whether it's necessary for us to delay something because of inadequate resources in 2016, because the something, whatever it is that we're choosing to delay, is lower priority than the priority of holding revenues constant. You're going to be gathering information about whether to reduce the level of some services or whether to change the level of services so that we can provide a higher level of service to some people. Budget decisions necessarily mean changing citizens' expectations about service delivery. And as you move through the next week and a half, we'll be talking about that a little bit, and as the recommended budget gets developed with Christy Zukovich's assistance, we'll be figuring out how to work with the news media to make sure that citizens' expectations for Sedgwick County government services in 2016 remain realistic. What's important to note, though, is that at any level of service, whatever we end up deciding about how much service we can provide, that level of service will be provided at the highest possible level of quality within the resource constraints that we face. We will not sacrifice quality in order to increase or maintain quantity. Looking forward, as we move through this budget cycle and then on into 2016, we will continue to focus on fiscal viability, to rely on enterprise solutions rather than silos to enhance the delivery of services. We will continue to lean on technology also to enhance services and to improve the quality of information for decision making. And we will certainly continue to be clear and concise about what services Sedgwick County is going to provide to its citizens. That, if I remember right, is the last of the slides in this presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any, and if you don't, then I'll take just a moment to walk you through the book of materials that you have received before you begin the first budget review.
Commissioner Underwood has a question.
Thank you. Chris, in the 2016 financial forecast, selected expense assumption, number 4, employee pay adjustments pool of 2.5.
Yes.
At our retreat, was that at 3.5 number? I don't remember.
No, it was 2.5% at the retreat as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris.
So in the book that you have received, there are a series of tabs. The calendar of the review sessions is behind the first tab. Behind the second tab are a series of summaries. These, at least the first 6 pages or so, are summaries that appear in the final adopted budget as well. And what you have in these summaries for 2016 is based on the requested budgets as of the time the requests were made. And so they do not include the things that we've talked about, the pool, the compensation pool, the revised fleet charges, and so on and so forth. At the end of that section, you have a summary listing of all of the decision packages and revenue packages that were submitted as a part of the budget requests. And then behind that, you have a series of tabs, one for each function of government. And within each of those tabs, you have a consistent layout of the budget request, summarizing first what the total budget request is for all of the departments and divisions within that function, and then going through each individual department, showing a summary of the budget request for that department, and then going into more detail about the individual programs within that department. If you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Otherwise, I think it's time for you to begin your first budget review, which is MAPD. If Mr. Schlegel is here, there he is. Do you have a presentation?
Yes, yesterday.
Where am I going here? Oh, do you know?
I'm going to
Yeah.
look and see, 'cause I didn't think we had one from...
Commissioners, when we begin this, we'll be on page 112 of your budget binder.
Well, we're going to have to go look and see, because we didn't see that we had one from her, so...
What do we
Wing
do?
it.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm going to wing it. So anyway, I did have a PowerPoint presentation. For some reason, that's not available to you. But my presentation is rather brief, so that should not be a big problem. The I think you're all familiar with department mission. We've gone over that in past years. Real quick, the services that we provide to the county include administration of the Unified Zoning Code and the Unified Subdivision Regulations. We provide the Historic Preservation Office for the City of Wichita. We are the keepers of the Wichita-Sedgwick County Comprehensive Plan. We also do neighborhood and area plans for the city and the county. And we do specific functional plans, such as the bicycle master plan that we did for the city, and more recently the pedestrian master plan that we did for the city of Wichita. We do face some changes in the current year and going into 2016, so I'll quickly review those, and some challenges that have resulted from past changes. We have faced staff reductions of about a third since 2010 due to budget reductions. That creates challenges in terms of providing for customer service coverage. It gets difficult at times between the administrative staff and planners to have somebody there to work with a customer that walks in the door. People take vacations, they get sick. We have an Army reservist that's off for a year because he's been deployed overseas. That all presents, when you have budget cutbacks, customer service gets to be a little bit more challenging. Another change that's coming up, present a little bit of a challenge for the department, there'll be a new director in place, hopefully sometime this year. I know that's in process right now. Oh, it's there. And the department will have to adjust to the new director and whatever new style and management and leadership skills that individual brings to the department. We're also working on separating WAMPO as an organization and the staff, the WAMPO staff, from MAPD. WAMPO has been busy, and they keep me pretty busy these days, working on doing the things that are necessary to complete that separation so that WAMPO will be a separate legal entity apart from the city of Wichita. We also have the potential for moving to a new location. You'll notice I put a question mark after that because there seems to be some uncertainties about that. But that's a huge challenge. I've been through that before in my career where I've had to move a department out of one building and into another at the same time that you're continuing to try to provide services to customers. And there are a lot of challenges associated with trying to do that. It's a bit like trying to change tire on a moving truck. And you can imagine how difficult that would be. And then one other issue that I think presents a challenge to the department is how to work with the commission on trying to determine what you want out of your zoning and subdivision regulations. We get a variety of signals from individual commissioners about how we should be proceeding with zoning and subdivision regulations. And I think what the department needs to do is figure out and help you figure out what it is that you want in your zoning code and the subdivision regulations. So the ask for 2016 is that amount that's up on the screen now. It's the same amount that has been asked for over the past, this will be the fourth year in a row. We've been managing to work within that. Although what will happen in 2016, because 90% of the MAPD budget is personnel costs, and those costs keep going up each year with cost of living increases and merit increases. So in 2016, the city's budget department, which is they're the ones that prepare our budget, is showing that we will have a deficit of about $74,000 next year. Now, unlike what Chris told you a little bit earlier, the city, in preparing their budget by departments, does incorporate expected salary and benefit increases into those budget projections. So they have built that into the MAPD 2016 budget projection. They're also assuming that whoever you hire to replace me after I retire in July would get paid the same as I'm getting paid. So that's a built-in assumption. I don't know whether or not my replacement will get the same salary or not, but there's potential savings there depending on what is offered to that individual. And then there are also built into our budget of the remaining 10% that's not personnel. The next biggest item in our budget is IT and telecommunications services that are provided by the city. And if the move does occur into the county building in 2016, we're anticipating there'll be some savings there because the county does not charge for those services in the same way that the city of Wichita does. Our only other option then, if we're not able to make up for that shortfall that's being projected by the city of Wichita in our budget, would be to have to cut another position sometime during 2016. So with that, be glad to take any questions.
John, can you tell me how many people you have total employed in MAPD?
There are 16. The head count is 16.
And can you provide us by email a more detailed budget for MAPD?
Sure.
MAPD?
Yeah, be glad to.
I have some questions. I guess,
How would you like that broken down?
well, however you have it.
Okay, well, I'll send whatever the city prepares then.
Okay. And I mean, I have an idea of the variety of things that you do and how much you say you spend on this, but do you have the number of FTEs, for example, that support zoning and subdivision versus comprehensive plan, et cetera?
Say that again? How many what?
How many FTEs, full-time employees, or how many do you estimate support
Oh.
the different functions that you do?
Right.
I don't have like zoning and subdivision. Is that 5?
All right, well,
comprehensive
there are
planning?
6 total that support, that are the current planning division. They support the administration of the zoning and subdivision code.
And what about comprehensive plan, neighborhood parks?
There are 5 there. And that'll all be in the breakdown that I send over to you. And then there are 4 administrative positions.
Okay. So that's 15.
And then, who am I not counting? No, I'm in the administrative division. I'm missing somebody. I'll send you the detail on that.
Okay, well,
So.
there's some things. What about things like?
Yeah.
What about things like CBD environmental reviews? Who does that? That's list?
We have one of our advanced planners does that on a part-time basis, and we get paid. We get about $17,000 in revenue from the city's community development block grant fund to perform environmental reviews for HUD projects. The city gets a certain amount of CDBG funds each year. There are a number of new projects that they undertake.
Right.
They have to do environmental reviews for that. And our guy has been the primary guy for doing that.
Well, so my question is, I mean, the county pays almost $41,000 to support that. My question is, why is the county paying for environmental reviews for Wichita CDBG money? I mean, we don't do that for any other county. Shouldn't that be something that's be funded by solely by the city?
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that, but they don't have that much community development block grant funding to provide because they allocate it to other projects. And unfortunately, those reviews take more time than that funding provides for.
Right. Well, there's a few others here that are listed Wichita only, but what about the boundary annexation survey? Is that something
It's required by state law.
for the boundary of Wichita?
Correct. That has to be done annually.
And that's, every city is supposed to do that, is that
Correct.
correct? Well, once again, I mean, that's a city requirement function. I guess I don't understand why the county is paying $20,000 to do that.
Well, we do it because it was assigned to us, and we do annexation for the city of Wichita, and so I think as a result of that particular task got assigned to MAPD.
Well, and that's fine. I'm fine that you're doing that, but I'm just saying, I'm not sure that the county should be paying for some of these city-only functions. We don't do it for any other city, I guess, is what I'm saying. So I would separate out some of these functions away from the zoning and subdivision, which I think is a mutual deal that we should share the cost with. So I think we need to have some ongoing discussions about that. That's all I have.
Now, you are aware there is an agreement between the city and the county regarding the MAPD budget
Yes.
that calls for it to be a 50-50 split.
I'm not sure there's anything. Well, I understand that, but we don't need to be putting things in MAPD's budget that really should be paid for by the city of Wichita. But I'm not sure that agreement is necessarily. I thought that's expired or not. It's kind of a gentleman's agreement at this point.
Well, no, there is a written agreement. The latest one I've seen goes back to 1991, but as far as I know, it's still in effect. Unless something else has happened since.
Okay. Let's follow up but nevertheless, I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying we don't want to share the cost of planning and zoning, but I'm thinking there's some things that have been put onto your department that, I mean, we put ComCare on the MAPD, or are they going to share the cost? I mean, that's just kind of example. All right, thanks. Commissioner Peter John.
Thank you. John, any additional information you have, I'd be happy to get it electronically.
Yeah, I'll send over the city's proposed budget pages for MAPD to all of you. So.
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other commissioners having questions.
Chairman, we are scheduled to take a break if you're done with questions for Mr. Schlegel.
How long a break? What time we
5
need to
minutes.
come back?
I would say we can come back at 2:10.
2:10. All right. Be here or be square.
Absolutely.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we're ready.
All right.
I'm reading ahead.
We are ready to look at the Sheriff's Office budget request. That'll begin on page 311 of your binder. And Sheriff Easter, I'll turn it over to you whenever you're ready.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. Appreciate you having me here today. We can do this fairly easy, or you can. No, I don't mean it that way.
can go to jail? Is
Or
that
you
what you're saying?
can, or I can go through the whole PowerPoint. I think you have the PowerPoint in front of you. It just talks about the different bureaus,
Do we
what the
have a
sheriff's office
PowerPoint?
is, those type of things.
I don't think we do have the PowerPoint.
Okay. I guess I'll go through it because there's only one slide that has to deal with my actual requests. So, the sheriff's office organizational chart has changed somewhat since I first came here. The actual Law Enforcement Bureau, Patrol Investigations, Judicial falls directly under me, as well as the Reserve Bureau and Professional Standards Bureau. Detention Bureau falls under Sheriff Danny Bartersbane, and then Chief Deputy Richard Powell has support services. Sheriff Administration maintains the office of sheriff as required by statute. Executive function of the office is required by statute, provides direction to the agency, maintains fiscal responsibility and budgetary control of tax-based and grant-funded programs, supports Law Enforcement Bureau, Professional Standards Unit, Sheriff's Reserve Bureau, Agency Development Strategy and Vision, administrates mortgage and tax sales as required by statute. Patrol Division is our frontline Sheriff's Office personnel, first responders to 911 calls for service. Investigations Division is case follow-up, crime scene documentation, evidence collection, and interface with the District Attorney's Office. Judicial Division is heavily involved with processes and direction of the courts, and also guarding the courtrooms during trials. Patrol Division, again, uniformed deputies. Primary function is law enforcement protection within the unincorporated areas of Sedgwick County. K-9 unit, criminal drug interdiction unit, community policing deputies, community liaison deputies, community-based programs that we're involved in is DARE, seniors, Callan, and Law Camp. Investigations Division is general investigations made up of person and property crimes. We have EMCU and ICAC, which is exploited and missing children cases, human trafficking cases, and internet crimes against children. We have a narcotics unit. With the task forces we're actually assigned to is DEA and the FBI JTTF task force. Now, we do interact with ATF and the Secret Service at times, and we're actually working some cases with the Postal Service as well. We have forensic investigators who do all our crime scene management. We also are in charge of the offender registration unit, which is recurring, or new and quarterly reoccurring offender registration, offender verification, carry concealed handgun application processing, and fingerprinting services. Judicial Division is the courtroom protection, warrant service, process service of civil papers and evictions and seizures, extradition. We also have a transport section, out-of-county housing transports, mental commitments, hospital and doctor transports. We also maintain a plane that picks up folks that are wanted on warrants that are picked up in other jurisdictions all across the United States. Detention Bureau. We have an operations division which maintains custody of all inmates as required by state statute, must meet all constitutional rights of all inmates, ensure safety of public, detention, medical, volunteer staff, inmate population, and overall security of the facility, inmate classification, daily staffing of all pods, facilitates inmate movement within the ADF. Support Division supports all inmate programs within the facility, food services, medical clinic services, pastoral care and chaplain program, and law library. Administers all volunteer-based programs, GED diploma program, Narcotics Anonymous, DV classes, Alcoholics Anonymous, Child Support Mentoring, Financial Responsibility, Cocaine Anonymous, YWCA, Project Butterfly, and Substance Abuse Counseling. Maintains Sheriff's Work Release Program. What I will also tell you is, due to the budget cuts from the state, the BOE here locally has cut the it's not actually a GED program. It was actually a high school program where they paid for the program itself and the teacher to come in for the inmates. Our last graduation will be in June, and then that program will be gone. So we're actually looking now to some type of GED program inside the facility. Training Section Academy provides basic LEO training as required by statute, provides annual LEO in-service training as required by statute, provides basic detention deputy training as required by sheriff policy and civil service policy. Currently, we are about one of two detention facilities in the state of Kansas that actually have a program or a training program put together for detention deputies. Training section also has firearms, provides firearms training to commission and reserve personnel, provides less lethal training to sheriff's office personnel, supports all statutory Required annual firearms qualifications, provides armor services to support all Sheriff's Office weapon systems, provides tactical training for Sheriff's Office SWAT and entry team personnel. Special Projects Unit is Public Information Officer. Research and Development assignments, maintains all Sheriff's Office asset inventory control, Department of Homeland Security, management of technology projects, ensures compliance to local, state, and federal technology standards, provides assigned Sheriff IT architect to DIO and IT. And that's a new position that we just acquired. Primary repository of all records and documents generated within the Sheriff's Office, provides requested documents to courts, citizens, attorneys, insurance providers, responds to court requests, and requests for information from outside agencies. Property and evidence control, maintains all, and that's our property and evidence section. That's where all evidence is turned in, maintains evidence and chain of custody of records, disposes of evidence as directed by the courts, disposes of all found and unclaimed property as defined by statute, supports all Sheriff's Office uniform and equipment inventory and distribution. So I went through all that, and now they gave you a copy for the only slide that matters. So the funding request this year is the first one is medical services. It's per contract. It's capped at 3%. Every year it goes up 3%. This year the funding will be $160,942. Inmate meals for the adult detention facility and work release. That is also by contract. It can be anywhere between 9 and 15%. And this year it was at 12% increase. So the combination of all three of those is a $391,161 increase over last year's budget. We're not asking for anything else within the Sheriff's Office except for what we're tied to by contract.
Sheriff, on those meal increases, do they have to provide us some sort of proof of increase, or do we audit that or look at that or verify that somehow?
Yeah, it's the food costs themselves that increase every year, and they provide that to us. That's why there's that 9% to 50. They can't go over 15%, but there's a assumed cost every year of at least 9%, and it's usually right in the middle.
But I'm saying, do we verify that the information they're giving us is accurate? Is there a way to do that?
Sure, we can. Richard Powell, Chief Deputy. Once they establish what the contract price increase will be, then they relay back to us what they call a per tray cost, which will be $1.27, $1.2735 or something like that. It'll be an incremental increase of whatever that equates to a per tray cost, and that's based on we feed a little over, if I remember correctly, a little over a million meals a year.
Right.
We break that down quite definitively, but it'll come out to be X number of cents or partial cents per tray on a per inmate basis per day per year. And it's just based on their raw cost of the raw food products themselves. And we're now in we are just starting the first 1 year renewal of 2 1-year discretionary renewals. We've already completed the first of the 3-year contract, and now we're in the first of 2 1-year renewals. So it'll be coming up again for contract renewal in mid-17.
So is this 9 to 15% in the contract, or just the estimate for?
It's purely an estimate based on raw costs.
For this?
Because in a 5-year window, it's really difficult to anticipate what food costs are going to be. I mean, we all buy groceries and things like that. We know how difficult and how sporadic those costs bounce
right
down.
Okay.
And unlike the medical, it does have a cap on it because it's purely based on consumer price indexing and has an absolute cap, where food costs are somewhat less controlled.
A little different.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Peter John.
Well, thank you. Sheriff, we still looking at a cost of roughly $35 a day per prisoner out of county?
That's what we're currently paying, yes, sir.
Okay. Let me ask a slightly different question. I noticed we do take in some revenue for judicial warrant service and paper service and that process. Is the revenue that comes in from that, is that primarily from one part of that activity, or is that coming in from several different revenue streams?
No, it's mainly one type of, they pay a fee for service of certain things that we have to serve. Either their attorneys will pay that fee. All of that money is returned to the general fund, though.
Yeah, I was just curious, is that something that has been reviewed at all in the last few years?
No, it has not.
Okay. Just a thought there. Does the sheriff's office take in any revenue from any of the municipalities, the third-class municipalities, for patrolling any of the smaller communities?
No, we do not.
Okay. I just was looking at a budget item. It looked like we took in a small amount of money for frontline sheriff's office.
Where do you see that at, sir?
Well, I'm actually on page 144 of
You're not going to have it.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Budget prioritization.
Yeah,
okay.
We
I'm
don't
sorry.
charge.
I'll get with your chief deputy afterwards.
Yeah, we don't charge any type of fees for helping do law enforcement in the county just because it's a smaller city.
Okay. Well, it was a modest amount of revenues tied to an item, $26,000 a year. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Looks like that's it, Sheriff.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
your time.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. I told you it'd be
next.
easy.
Well, he said it could be easy. I'm glad it was. Up next on our agenda, we'll have facilities, fleet, and parks. That's going to be on page 116, but I will make a call real quick to make sure we have our presenter here with us. We're a little early.
Where the heck is it? Uh-huh.
All sheriffs. Yes. Yeah. And it had not been reviewed for over 20 years. And we finally got the legislative body to address the revised statute because it was like it was $3.
Yeah.
$3, and they got what were called ghost warrants that we got the paper for 12 times. We successfully. Every time Joe Biden moved, he had to
Whatever you want to do.
These are 6 held categories, a total of 13 positions. Is that the way, am I reading it correctly?
I think so.
Is that all they have held? I heard it was 35. Is it, I heard it was 35 total. Is it 13 or is it, what is it? Am I missing something?
Well, that probably doesn't count. Detention deputy, how many of those is it?
No, there's only 5 there.
And then how many here?
One,
Oh,
one, one,
you're,
5.
you're counting.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is.
Let me ask him real quick. And you knew.
Yeah.
Sheriff Powell, I know this is not, we're not open here, but can you tell me what are the number of positions that are held currently that are?
Of the 17 positions that we run since 2011-12, we currently have 13 still fixed.
Yeah, they show the 13. Okay.
We refunded 4 of the 17.
Okay. And is that what the, like, for example, was it 83 to 87 here?
For the decision
example?
packages.
Not
necessarily for
Doc
the-
was 83, but revised was 87. There was 12, went to 13.
Right.
Okay.
And of course,
Sure.
we've
Sure.
shuffled people around to their
13 positions open.
well, that's just frozen positions.
Frozen, unfunded, unfilled positions.
Open positions that are funded. We have, today we have 39 in jail. And I think 6 on the commission side.
6 on, is that 39 total? Or 39 plus 6 or 39?
And Chairman, we've got our presenter.
That's right.
If you're ready to begin.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Clausen, if you could start. And again, we are on page 116 of your budget binders, and we'll be going through facilities, fleet, and parks. And so I'll be referring you to those different pages as we get to that part of Steve's presentation. And Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, good afternoon. This will be a presentation on the budget of facilities, fleet, and parks. Facilities is made up of 3 sub-service areas, maintenance led by Greg Tuxhorn, courthouse police, Daryl Haynes, and Tanya Cole leads the project services group. Its mission is to provide accessible, safe, efficient, and highly productive buildings and structures where citizens and employees are able to conduct their business and access needed services. Starting with the maintenance budget of the 3 departments in facilities, maintenance is by far the largest budget and the most challenging to manage. To understand that budget, I think it's helpful to know how the dollars spent break down. Of its total roughly $6 million budget, 43% is comprised of paying utility bills, 34% is paying personnel, fix, repair, lube, shovel snow, stage, various things, and then the remaining 23% is made up of paying the large contracts, the contractuals and commodities that the department manages. Core services of maintenance are managing the utilities, which often means walking kind of a tightrope between the interests of our customers and our interest to keep utility bills down. Issues of too hot or too cold or lavatory faucets running too long or too short are the balancing act that we often struggle with. Citizens and employees depend on us to keep the lights on and the buildings operating efficiently and comfortably. I indicated here under that managing utilities as being a responsible consumer, and in that regard I'm referring to just trying to make the best of the limited financial and energy resources that we have available. Another core service is providing preventative and reactive maintenance, that is repairs for our property, that limits the disruptions to the important work that takes place with the different service providers that we have. The focus for this is maintaining safe and conditions to and from our facilities, providing safe work environments, and ensuring that we get the longest useful life from the investments that we've made in our facility infrastructure. Contract administration is another core service for the that's the large county contracts such as our consolidated custodial vendor, the jail food service contract, grounds maintenance, the courthouse cafe, countywide elevator services. These are some of those larger contract services that we manage. Why is that a focus? We require full value for our contracted services, and we know that the only way we're going to get that is if we focus the attention and required time it takes to insist on those services being fulfilled in their entirety. And I think we all benefit from that, our citizens and employees as well, and everybody wants to see those efficient operations. The scope of facilities maintenance is 52 significant county buildings. There are many more tiny ones. That 52 buildings makes up 1,667,000 square feet of space that we take care of. Regarding the challenges and changes in maintenance, more consolidated maintenance operations has been in place for 3 years now, and that is a success story. There continues to be needed adjustments and tweaks to the way we do business that are necessary, but departments are increasingly relying on us to take care of what we do best, enabling them to focus on the things that they can do best. And this is going to be a recurring theme. The utility costs consistently are a challenge for us to manage as they continue to go up. Roughly about 5% is what we see consistently taking place. By the way, I mentioned earlier that 43% of our budget's made up of utility bills. Just a few years ago, and I can go back, but I'm thinking it's between 6 and 7 years ago, that was 33%. So you can see how the utility bills is just squeezing our budgets in a real significant way. Challenging, too, are the other escalating costs of vendor service costs. Just any one of these by itself doesn't seem too significant, but in aggregate they consume a big chunk of the budget, and that squeezes out some of the less eminent issues that we have to deal with, like replacing worn carpets, painting things that are getting dingy, and that's the kind of deferred maintenance that's getting deferred and has been for the last couple of years. The adult detention facility continues to be a challenge for us to maintain. It is getting older. 16 and 27 years is the age of that building. It's a tough environment, and it's heavy maintenance, and that is increasing. Moving to project services. Project Services provides staff support to the CIP committee in the development of the capital improvement program plan. They work with departments to determine their needs and make them aware of the county policies and procedures, as well as providing project management, serving in the role of the owner's representative between our contractors and suppliers and architects and engineers. A large part of Project Services resources are dedicated toward ADA compliance. Many of these projects are small, but they are all time-consuming and relate to many people, so it's a time-consuming process. We are glad that we are making significant forward progress on the ADA compliant issue.
Steve?
Yes?
In relation to that, we are done with all of the high priority ones.
That's right.
Now on medium priority, I think.
That's right.
Do you know roughly how many medium priority projects there are?
Hundreds.
Hundreds. Okay.
Well, we call them projects, but one may be we've got a 3% slope on a sidewalk rather than a 1% that's required, and so it just may be in a small area. Another one might be moving a grab bar from one section to the other, but I mean there's just hundreds of these. Then there's others where the dimensions of a bathroom are not what they need to be, and that impacts lots of folks.
Got it.
But we've made a lot of progress toward that. Project Services manages and administrates county leased facilities, and coordinate and manage office department workstation reconfigurations wherever they occur. As I said, Project Services manages and administrates our leased properties, and that includes 217,000 square feet of leased space, over 25 different leases, and the total annual cost for those leases is $1,880,000. Project Services works with its customers to ensure their needs are met at the same time that we employ consistent county standards throughout all the different projects that we do. Then moving on to Courthouse Police. Courthouse Police provides secure, weapons-free environment at our courthouses. That's the juvenile courthouse and this building. Screening visitors to prevent the entry of weapons. Our commitment is that everyone other than employees is screened before entering the 2 courthouses, and that's a 24/7, 365 commitment. Courthouse Police provides 24/7 preventative patrols at the downtown campus, preventing crime and minimizing exposure to risks after hours related to water leaks and smoking motors and fires. And then they also serve as the first responders to incidents outside the district courtrooms and assist inside those courtrooms. Courthouse Police has a full-time equivalent employee stationed in the domestic court on the 4th floor of this building. That's an often contentious part of this building that we've got to dedicate someone to. On Thursdays, protection from abuse and stalking proceedings take place in the jury room. We sometimes always have one person there, often 2. And Courthouse Police administrates and oversees the parking garage contract. They serve the public in answering a lot of questions and supervise the information desk. With respect to Courthouse Police's changes and challenges, you may remember that last year the board approved a change to properly refer to the Courthouse Police Force as the Sedgwick County Courthouse Police, and that had been in place for a while, and it has improved employee morale and improved the standing of the department, so we're pleased that that's taken place. Another challenge is the continual training requirements that are required of the department. Their certified law enforcement folks have to have 40 hours of annual training to maintain their certifications, and then they must have training on all the different gear that they possess for their policing duties. They pursue grant funding opportunities where they're available. We still have some areas in the courthouse that we need more camera coverage, and they are active in pursuing grant funding to help us with that. With the facilities decision packages are listed on, the first one is on page 123 and 124. We have 3 decision packages. The first one is electricity, water, sewer rate increase. It's pretty straightforward and understandable. It's for $104,364. It's a cost of business that is regular, and we'll see this again. The next decision package is on page 125. It's a small $4,782 one to take care of a trash disposal contract. And then finally on page 127, we have a decision package for the Jail Master Control Technology Service Agreement. The recently completed Jail Master Control makes us very dependent on this increased complex system, and a service agreement that provides preventative maintenance as well as some backup and support when problems occur is really a necessary cost of business, and that decision package request is $45,000. Moving forward to the Fleet Department, Fleet's mission is to provide proper vehicles. Did you want to indicate the page?
Yes.
I don't know.
Commissioners, the fleet management section is on page 155 of your book. Thank you, Steve.
Mm-hmm. Its mission is to provide proper vehicles and equipment, effective fuel service, and high-quality, timely maintenance and repairs to meet operational needs of supported Sedgwick County government and departments. Penny Poland leads that department. I thought I'd just list the cost centers in this slide because I think it tells a quick story of what the elements of the Fleet Department are. Of course, we have an administration, a small administration function. stockroom or parts room, heavy equipment shop, a light equipment shop, body repairs, vehicle acquisition, radio maintenance, and the sheriff's airplane that is the fuel and repairs run through the fleet budget. Fleet's another service department that's like maintenance and project services where the scope of their work is really defined for them. Fleet doesn't determine how many sheriff's vehicles or ambulances or front loaders are in the inventory. Likewise, they don't determine how many miles are driven, but they're committed to making sure the equipment is managed efficiently and properly maintained. Their core services include acquiring, managing, and caring for all the county vehicles and equipment. Those are essential tools for departments such as Sheriff, EMS, and Public Works, to name the biggest customers. Everyone recognizes that although these assets go to the departments, it's the citizenry that benefits and is the reason for this equipment. Another core service is fuel administration, which is a responsibility of Fleet. They work to accurately account for the and prepare the billings to the different departments that are using fuel. Fuel tanks are all around the county. We have some here in this building. They manage all the fuel tanks, which is a highly regulated function, and they take care of that responsibility for us. They work to see that the systems are in place to make sure the fuel can be efficiently accessed. And they also, all the county departments, I think, benefit from the economies of scale that they purchase the fuel from, and so everybody benefits with respect to that. Another core function is the heavy and light duty shops that provide the repairs and maintenance for the normal county equipment that you see. Staying on top of those needs ensures the equipment's kept in service. We use an equipment availability metric that monitors availability, and we're pleased to be able to say that that remains at 95% availability again. The changes and challenges in Fleet listed the outsourced parts inventory management, which has been in place now 2 years. That change has fully met our cost-saving projections. Parts availability remains very good, and the cost that we pay for parts is less than what we had been paying, and Penny continues to check other sources to make sure we're still getting the best deal we can. And with respect to fuel, I wanted to mention that the projections for developing our budgets this year, the projections for fuel costs are slightly less than they were last year. And I'll move now to Parks. And what page is that on, Lindsay?
We are going to be, if I can get to the page, 558.
Parks is led by Mark Schroff. Parks' mission is to provide a recreational experience that's attractive, safe, and efficient by providing quality recreational facilities and events for the public to enjoy. Our park locations are Afton, Sedgwick County, and the Northeast Sedgwick County Park. Just describing briefly a little bit about the parks. Lake Afton is a 258-acre lake with 720 acres of total site where boating, skiing, swimming, fishing, camping, and rentals of open and closed shelters is available. At Afton is where the Lake Afton Service Center is located, where all the business of the Sedgwick County, both the Sedgwick County Park and the Lake Afton Park, all the business is transacted there at that Lake Afton Service Center, and also the store and bait shop, which is back in business, is at that location. The Sedgwick County Park is a 4-acre site with 4 small lakes, tennis, bike, and walk paths, picnicking, restroom facilities, the Boundless Playground, which is popular, is out there. There are other play areas as well. Shelters for group events are available for rent, and those are regularly full to capacity. Some of the frequent larger events that all of us have come to know and recognize is the Woofstock event takes place there, Renaissance Fair, and it's full of run walk events just about every weekend of the summer. Northeast Sedgwick County Park, we're still spending some time establishing the native grasses. That's kind of ongoing. That's a 646 acre prairie and woodland area. We will be permitting hiking, equestrian activities, dog walking, and we're going to not allow anything using a motor. No hunting, fishing, camping, or fires, and bicycling is prohibited there. Some of the changes and challenges in parks, the Plum Shelter was completed largely with park staff labor. It was just recently completed, and we just hosted our first guest there last weekend. It's rented every weekend through into September. Even though it hasn't been listed on the website or marketed in any way, people have been anxious to see that. I think it's proximity to the Boundless Playground. It makes it very, people know about that building. It's a roughly 1,400 square foot building that very attractive. A lot of folks are going to be anxious to rent that. Late this year, park staff will begin work on a new center restroom at the Sedgwick County Park. Park staff continues to replace some of the old weather-worn roofs at the shelters at Lake Afton. And I wanted to mention that the new park rules that you all recently passed went into effect with the fee schedule changes, and that implementation has gone quite smooth. There is a decision package on page 564 for the Parks Department. It's really a simple one too, I think. The requested amount is $33,000 decision package representing the annual cost of goods sold for the park office, and enables the replenishment of its inventory. The dollars collected from the store receipts do not go into the store's fund center, but into the general fund. So this takes place or provides for the replenishment of their inventory. So the total division decision packages is $187,146. And our total division budget, $7,700,000 for facilities. Fleet is 10.3. Sedgwick County Park is $400,000. Afton $629,000. Our division total is $19,155,542. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Steve, I have a couple questions on Lake Afton store. That non-recurring request for stock. We'll buy this one time, and then each year use the proceeds we got to replenish that, or is that every year we'll still do that?
It should be, and once it gets into the budget, so long as we continue to use those base requests every year, where the adopted budget is used from the previous year, it'll be built in from here on out.
And it's expected to cover itself plus 30 to 60%.
Right.
Now, my question, I'll have another question about, you say because of it reopening, you're going to increase staff by 0.16.
No, that is not increasing staff. We've reallocated staff. It's just no. I don't think.
Okay, well, where's it coming from?
Sedgwick County Park.
Right.
If you look on page 567, you'll see a shift of point.
Oh, never mind.
160.
Okay, I was
to Lake
looking at
Afton
that.
Park.
Yeah, okay. So it's a net. It's a net
Wash.
Net zero. Right.
zero for the. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. That's all I have. Any other questions? Commissioner Peter John.
Well, thank you. On that store, when it says 30 to 60%, is that assuming 30 to 60% of the inventory, or 30 to 60% of total receipts that come into that to that facility? Because I know they're selling they've been selling like licenses and stuff. So when we say 30 to 60%, I'm trying to.
Yeah, that is the markup. 30 to 60% markup above the cost of goods sold.
Against the retail.
Against the cost.
I'm sorry, the wholesale.
Right, wholesale.
36. Okay.
30 to 60, and it varies by the particular piece of inventory that we're talking about.
But that would not include the prior revenues. We're keeping all the license and stuff separate and outside that.
I don't think so.
That's just the $33,000 that you're going to use to spend to buy the
To
stock.
buy inventory, or replace
30 to 60%
Yeah.
above that.
Say so that's somewhere between $10,000 to $20,000, roughly, Mark.
So we think our sales will be that $10,000 to $20,000 above the $33,000 is what our gross sales, which will go into the general fund. And Lindsay, don't let me get in bad water here, but what we're asking for is to reestablish our cost of goods sold. That's what I keep referring to it as.
What are we doing this year?
We're working out of our existing inventory.
Okay. And somewhere towards the end of the year, I'd like to have some data to support what we think was going to happen and increase. I mean, at this point, have you noticed any increased, maybe it's kind of early, park usage or anything like that?
Mark Schroth will be better able to answer that question.
The public response to the reopening of the bait shop has just been fantastic. Everybody's been very thankful that we are open. They're buying bait, they're buying anything and everything. So right now, I would say it's above what I projected it would be so far.
Okay.
Next week will probably really tell us the story for Memorial Day weekend.
Okay. Well, we did this in the hopes that it would actually increase revenues, and so somewhere towards the end of the year, you got to show me the bacon, and we'll.
Yeah, that won't be a problem.
All right. Thanks. Commissioner Peter John.
Let me continue a little bit. Get back. You mentioned obviously the utility costs. And electricity by far the major one. I'm just trying to think in terms of if there's any ways to try and address that in a major way, since it's not like Sedgwick County needs to keep the neon flashing, so to speak. And I'm just trying to think in terms of ways, and whether is this a challenge strictly with the county-owned property, Steve, or is it also including that leased property too? Because any way you can break that up for me, break out the numbers a little bit would be helpful, and I'm thinking in terms of trying to come up with some options to try and reduce costs.
Well, we have, try to remind you, we've been through a couple of performance contracts where we've audited or we've had independent folks come into the facilities and suggest ways to trim our utility usage. And those were helpful. We established a 6 or 7 year payback decision point. If it couldn't pay itself back within 6 or 7 years, I think we didn't pursue that. So there are some things that are out there that we could do that have longer paybacks. And then to get to your question with regard to leases, trying to think how that breaks out. Most of our leases, utilities are a part of the lease. I shouldn't say most. It's a lease by lease situation that I've got a document that I could provide you that would show that. But it's individual. Each individual lease is a little different. So I'd be happy to share that with you.
Okay.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious if you can tell me how many facilities do we have at the two parks, Afton and Sedgwick County?
How many facilities?
Yeah.
Oh, buildings?
Yeah.
We'd have to count them. There's it's just like when I talk about 52 buildings within the facilities department. It's like what what is an accessory building and what's a
Right.
fundamental. I mean, you have to define this a little bit.
I'm just-
there are lots of shelters, just with the unenclosed shelters.
I guess I'm a little surprised. Between the two parts of this book, there's 9.5 FTE. Is that not 6 at one and 3.5 at the other? So it's 9.5 FTE for the two.
Yeah.
And they don't share responsibilities in any way. In other words, people from Lake Afton don't go to Sedgwick County Park.
Yes.
They do.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But their FTE counts are separated.
Right. It's just, that's the best estimate that, trying to accurately reflect what the costs are for each park, but they do go back and forth often.
So we have roughly about, just a little bit less than 10 employees, 9.5 employees taking care of these two parks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what about facilities rental? Is that revenue shown in the revenue line? Is it just buried in there? I just don't see it. There's a revenue line on several of the. There's the Lake Afton Park, for example, on page 562 says revenues. Does that include the facilities rental at Lake Afton Park, and then same thing over at Sedgwick County Park?
Those, sorry.
Please.
Yes, the charges for service would reflect that line in the revenue category that you're looking at there on page 562 would reflect those costs, or those revenues, excuse me.
Okay. So subtracting out our expenditures and taking into account our revenues, these parks are costing. They really don't. They don't self-sustain in any way. There's
Not at
there's
all.
a fair amount of liability for the
In
county.
fact,
to
when
have
we
these.
went through the fee schedule change, you may remember, I think I made a comment when we were briefing you that, as I recall, it's, no, it doesn't come close to paying for itself, but the fee changes contributed to a more self-sustaining parks operation. But it doesn't come close to that, to be responsive to your question.
I guess I just have a hard time understanding exactly how we're. I guess to me, 10 FTE seems like a lot for what we're doing there. I guess maybe I don't have a good understanding of what we're doing there.
Yeah.
So,
And what we should do, and we'll provide this to each of you commissioners, a list of all the buildings. There are several buildings out there, shelters that are air-conditioned, heated, plumbing, all the, like little homes that are leased. And they're used hard, so there's a lot of maintenance with respect to those.
but those facilities are generally rented out to users.
Right.
And
Yeah.
do they actually generate revenue, or do they
Yeah.
actually cost?
Yeah, and that's
So
in those
even though they
revenue.
have air conditioning and that type of thing, there's maintenance required on those buildings. They actually do generate revenue. They're positive for the county.
Absolutely. Well, positive. I don't. I think the cost of the facility still is in excess of what we probably cover our operational costs, but that would require a little bit more digging into the weeds to make a categorical statement like that.
All right. I'll be thinking about this some more. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I would just add, Commissioners, it's buildings and grounds.
Right.
So that there's a significant amount of groundskeeping, mowing, tree trimming. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
And may I also add that they framed the plum shelter. They do building projects as well. They're tearing down shelters they're re-roofing buildings. There's a contracting element of this that we contract the HVAC and the plumbing and even the roof on some of the larger buildings, but they act as their own general contractor there, so they perform some other services as well.
All right. Well, thank you.
See any other questions? Next.
Well, that's our last plan presentation for the day. We had scheduled an additional 30 minutes for discussion if there was any, if you need it.
Yeah, I had a question. Well, it was back to facilities. I noticed that there's 3 positions still frozen for facilities, but the question is really in general. I think we have, how many positions do we have frozen?
I can pull that information
Roughly.
for you. Roughly, I'm thinking between 40 and 50.
Okay, so we still have budget authority for those.
We do not. When we hold a position, that position remains on the staffing table, but it's unfunded, and we have a way to mark it in the system so that it is not filled.
It makes it look like here that it's funded. Is that right?
I think what I'm thinking you may be seeing, if you're on page 119, is that what you were looking at? I think we're talking about maybe 2 different things. If you're looking in that grade column, and you see the word frozen at the bottom, what that means is that the person in that position has maxed out in terms of their range. If you want to talk about held positions, you would actually see that in the position title, and so maybe a good example to see one of those would be the sheriff's office. And so we can turn to page 314. And what you'll see is throughout the page, there are multiple positions that begin with held and then say sheriff sergeant or held sheriff deputy. And so that would be what we would consider technically a held position.
Okay, so why don't we, not necessarily sheriff, but in general, why don't we just remove those from the landing table? What's the purpose for not?
Would you like to address that, or would you like me to?
By leaving them on the staffing table, it gives us the flexibility, if the funds are available, to hire someone and fill that position if we have the budget authority without coming back to the commission.
But don't you have to come back to the commission to release a held position?
Historically, we have not. The manager has been able to authorize it so long as the budget authority, so long as sufficient salary savings are there to cover the cost of the position. And so we've done that a few times.
Okay, so we held a lot of these positions and gave people money to retire early, et cetera, thinking there'd be a cost benefit. Have we analyzed that to see if we're actually getting that, or opening these things back up means we didn't actually realize any cost benefit?
It's been a while since I've looked at that specific information, but we did take a look to see of those. I'm going to talk about two separate things: the special voluntary retirement program, where we had 119 people take advantage of that. We have some estimates on the cost savings for that, because we did end up losing a lot of those positions. In terms of the held positions, there hasn't really been analysis to see how that's affecting departments.
But those 119 positions, were those eliminated?
So many were.
From the man?
Yes, most of it.
Most of them were.
Yes.
So those won't be. I guess those are the really ones I'm concerned about. Is that?
We're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, we've kind of not. All right. That's good enough. I'm not sure who first, but Commissioner Peter John.
Well, let me jump back. Budget situation manager presented on page 19. I can ask a question, and I'm not sure if it's the manager or Chris or Lindsay that I should point in the direction. It shows us dropping an actual for 2014 $2.7 million to a shortfall of $7.8 million. I'm assuming that 7.8 includes the 5.3 million for the elephants, a barn at the zoo. Were there other major capital expenditures that would also be in there? The purchase of the...
Okay. The estimate that you see there, that $7.8 million, also includes the estimated $2.6 million that we heard about from corrections in January with relation to basically rehabilitating the JRBR facility and moving back into that. And so that's kind of the big difference between what you saw at the retreat for 2015, where it was about $5.3 million operating deficit, and the now $7.8 million that you see.
Okay, so is that 2.6, and walk me through that again. Is that all operational, or does that include some capital?
It includes $2 million of outright capital projects.
Okay.
And then the additional $600,000 is comprised of some of the projects like blowing out the lagoon lines and those types of things that are more contractual in nature.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a couple of questions. Back on page 314, you talked about there's 13 positions that are held. Mm-hmm. Those are authorized but not funded, is that correct?
They are on the staffing table, but they would not necessarily be authorized to fill without some kind of special action.
Okay, but they're not funded as well?
Correct.
Okay.
And you didn't hear the sheriff ask one yet?
That's correct. And that was actually one of the points I was going to make while he was here, but he left. It's fine. I did ask Sheriff Powell to tell me about how many positions are open right now, and I think he told me 39 There's 39 positions. I'm not sure how you classified them, but there's 39 of one type of position, and there's 6 of another type of position for 45 total. Is that correct, Lindsay?
Yes.
Are those are funded positions?
Yes.
Are they just looking for people to fill them, or they're hard to fill?
Yes.
Okay, so they're intended to be filled, and they have been filled. It's just an ongoing process to. Okay, I'm sorry. I bring to the table a perspective of a state legislator that there's a lot of funded positions that are not filled on purpose, and that's a way that some of the agencies at the state level have a little bit of extra money to do different things that they just enjoy. So I'm not trying to be too suspicious here, but I just was wondering about that. So that's a great answer. So those 45 positions will be filled at some point. Okay. Then back over to page 119. I'm trying to catch up with the. There's a lot of dashes in this, and on the FTE comparison from year to year, a lot of dashes. And I noticed that they're actually relisted in there as a different grade level, different grade. So is there a way I can understand the differences in these grades, and why would they reclassify, for example, a public relation and info clerk? It was a grade. Well, yeah. Actually, that one says frozen, doesn't it? Some of these are frozen, I guess, as well. But there are some other ones that just change names, and they change grade. Actually, some of the names are similar, but they change grades, and I think they're connected to somehow. I noticed that the total FTE in those columns are exactly the same. I'm having trouble figuring out exactly what goes to what.
Essentially, all that means is that because we have 3 different phases of the budget that we represent in here, we show the 2015 adopted, the 2015 revised, and the 2016 budget. All that means is that at some point in that time period, we've either had a reclassification come before you for approval so that a position has changed, but because we are showing so much of that detail, you'll see what those grades are for each of the phases. And so if that's something that causes confusion, we could certainly try and stick with one phase. But that's all it means is at some point the commission has authorized a reclassification of that position to either change it up or down so that its pay range changes.
Okay. Well, if I'm the only one that needs that help, I don't mind having a little bit more understanding of that. Just as a single commissioner is fine. I don't necessarily need to waste the time of the entire board up here on that, but I'd like to understand that just a little bit better at some point. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Guess we're done for today then.
Thank you very much. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 10 o'clock.